Mount Lolly Show. Courage Culture Commentary.
I just loved how those Marvel universes and those comic universes have really, branches out of a tree. Just get a universe, and then they take a character in that universe, and then they just expound. And all of these different cool things had to have come about by a similar recipe, which is just being inspired by something that's really cool, maybe sometimes even making it even cooler in an internet world, in a YouTube world, for people to really, take a character that you love and that only got like 5 minutes on screen and write a backstory for that character, completely come up with a world in that universe still, but where the lens is following a totally different perspective. I just think that stuff's so cool.
A lot of different universes with the comic book worlds, and some of these film franchises have given us these big universes. And there's book universes, with Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia. They're all universes. And a lot of this newer stuff is it's kind of like a fan version of something that's already out there. That's why I never really bit on the Divergent series thing, because it's basically piggybacking off of Hunger Games.
Right.
And right. I guess in some of these regards, that's why I always felt like The Giver kind of got a bum rap, because even though the reason the film was made was because of Hunger Games, the book was before and better, I thought. That genre was my favorite genre. It's Memorial Day weekend I saw Tomorrowland, and I really enjoyed that movie. It was probably one of the bigger flops in the last few years as far as what they put into it. It was kind of a mysterious ad campaign, which in this day and age never works. I personally feel like the film did work, and I think I see enough of these movies that I know if it's my personal opinion or if the film worked. I think the film worked. Maybe the timing of the film and the marketing campaign, and it wasn't that the film wasn't good, because the film was good. I mean, I've seen movies that had a great ad campaign, and then you go to the movie and you're like, what the heck, this is garbage. Or there's so much that the director's trying to say politically that it really takes away from the film, but I didn't feel like any of that stuff was in there.
Or you just said something like, a lot of times these ad campaigns or these exterior components will sink a film, and that's so sad, but it's true. And then you think back on all these cult classics and all these greats that were total stinkers in the movie theater.
Yeah,
most
absolutely.
notably, actually, is the Christmas film that everybody watches every
Fifth Element was a big flop.
Shawshank Redemption was a big flop.
Shawshank wasn't a big hit. Dark City.
Oh, yeah.
That movie made no money, and that movie's a fantastic movie.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of it is the modern way of selling a movie is just weird. It is sometimes I think that genre is suffering a little bit from the music kind of plague, but not quite, because you see a box office like Jurassic Park and you realize people still do want to go to the movie theater. There's a movie theater where I live that really spent a lot of money on making an experience. They bought these huge recliners.
I think things become a cultural phenomenon, and I think people want to be part of that. But if there's any way that they can watch a film without spending the money, if they can just watch them on their phone or their computer illegally, they'll do that. But when stuff becomes a cultural phenomenon, like let's take the last 2 years back to back, Guardians of the Galaxy, which is about as niche-y of a film as you can possibly get. They just happened to do everything right. It became a blockbuster. It became the biggest money-making movie of the year. But it's a super niche-y film if you think about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's some magic too. Like the guy Pratt, he's got a lot of crossover appeal because he's handsome. He also has this weird booby fart joke thing going on with his past at Parks and Rec. He's got like a human interest story where he lost all his weight and he used to be like a nobody. And so I actually think his star rising hit that movie at just the right time. And I got to tell you, when I saw that preview, I didn't want to see it. So that was one of those clear things where I didn't think that the ad campaign or the rollout was very effective.
I can remember Pratt was still at the time he could have walked down the street. 99 out of 100 people probably wouldn't have recognized the dude, but he was. I saw him in this interview and he said, "Yo, we're making this movie Guardians of the Galaxy," and I'm a comic book guy, and I said, "I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what this comic. It's a super niche comic book. Disney bought Marvel, so it's like a 10th tier comic book franchise as far as like well-known comic books. It's like you have to really know comic books to know this. So they just kind of like they did with John Carter. Because John Carter was a huge flop. It was like the big flop of the year.
Which surprised me a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Think of the context of that. A Civil War hero falls on hard times, then gets transported to Mars and finds redemption in a civil war in Mars. I mean, the story sounds really interesting and intriguing. Used same kind of character, a TV star turned movie star, up and coming, and it just didn't work for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. There's so many components to this stuff. It's changing, a totally changing landscape by way of the way we watch movies and consume. I mean, I for one, I'm not the kind of guy who like pirates and does all kinds of stuff. But I'm to the point now where I'm tech savvy enough where if something comes up and I just don't want to support it, I'll actually do that now. And I'm sure that's a bending of my ethics. But like I just got so infuriated with Hollywood and yet still wanted, to whet my appetite with some of this stuff. So I'll just test the waters. And in the past what I've even done is I've watched like 15 minutes of like something online, and if it just totally grips me, and I think it's really, really good, me and Kel just did this the other night, I actually turn around and go to iTunes and I buy it and I stream it and do it legit. But I think this whole kind of revolving, weird, nobody really knows where it's going to land. I am fascinated by that. I've talked that thing in circles to death, but I'm fascinated by the way art and commerce are going to finally meet. Because if you think about all the components that are going on with this, you've got I hate the rich crowd, and I hate anybody who's successful. I hate anybody who's making money, right? So you got that element. You got this element of people have way less money. The economy's a wreck. It's going to continue to get bloodletted until we get different people in power. And then you got this whole attitude where a laissez-faire attitude about consumerism in art. Like people just don't care about the artist. They say they do. Like they'll be like, oh, if it's a small guy from my town, I'll buy it. But he won't. It's all convenience. Yeah. It's totally convenience driven. It's funny. It's like a fascinating little like world that I like to kind of figure out because I don't understand how I'm not able to wrap my mind around how we continue to see Jurassic Park and get everything for free. Like it's still working somehow.
George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. I don't know how many of these other epic directors were part of this, but they pretty much came to a consensus that the way film would be presented is you'd have, half a dozen $200 to $500 million movies that would be released into theaters, but they'd be there for 3 to 6 months. And in order to get their money back and in order for all that stuff, and everything else would be consumed
streamed.
Online. Yeah, and I'm sure you have these small movie houses.
That's actually pretty smart. I think that's a fairly accurate. So the whole movie
it's all but happened. It has. I mean, this was only a year. Actually, maybe it was 2 years ago now that I first read that article, and it's all but happened. I mean, you get 5, 6 big budgets. So you'll get the Hunger Games, you'll get if the Harry Potter's around, you get the Jurassic World, so a reboot of an old franchise. You get the Star Wars. You're looking at 6, 7. Big budget, big promoted films from these guaranteed return on investments, and then everything else is going to go to the movie house and be in the movie theater for maximum of 2 weeks.
But you know what? That sounds accurate. But here's my fear. Okay, so how many times have we stumbled into something really, really great? Somebody took a chance. All that sounds like it goes away under this model.
No, I don't think it goes away. I think what happens is some weird interview thing. You remember the interview was like some weird thing, and then it got sent to. And then YouTube bought it, and then it got bought by Netflix. And I think what ends up happening, it'll organically kind of happen where it will be released. If it's one of these small stories.
So I got it. So if it catches fire on a small medium, then they kind of bring it up to the big leagues because of its success and its resonance.
And you'll know, let's say, for example, like this is a perfect example. You'll have a TV movie. Let's just pick one out of the blue that was a success in the last 10 years. High School Musical. Well,
right.
one and two were TV movies, and the third one was released in the movie theaters. There was enough people and enough momentum and enough products sold and enough groundswell that it caused, well, let's make a movie out of it. Or even going even farther back, Serenity, which was a TV show that had 14 episodes, and ended up making, I think, a great science fiction film. I mean, a little annoying because there were so many questions unanswered, but at least it's the same model.
I think that all sounds right. I mean, I think that sounds right. And who knows? I mean, ultimately, who knows? I never would have saw Netflix. Not movie streaming, but content creation.
To give you a little crazy trip through time, I remember reading about this thing online. We're talking 2003 or 4. But I remember reading this thing online where you can get movies back, I don't know how much it was exactly, maybe $10 or something like that, where you could get a movie in the mail, And I did it, and I did it for a couple months, and I liked it, but the turnaround from watching it, sending it, to getting it back was like 6 days. And ultimately they settled on 3. You could do a 3 package that I think was, $17.99, if I remember correctly, a month.
Right, I did this, yeah.
Yeah, 3 movies at a time. And then there was a time when really pushed the streaming, and I remember people bellyached about that. I quote, who wants to watch movies on their phone? Who wants to watch, not even on their phone, on their computer? Who wants to watch movies on their computer?
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah, there was a huge upswing, yeah. People left their account and everything.
Yes. Yeah. And then they raised it by $2. Do you remember this? And then what they did is they made everything. All the films of all time they may have had 0.001% available for streaming. Well, then they upped that to maybe 10% of all the movies ever made. In rotation, you could watch on there, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you think of all the movies ever made,
it's just quite a lot. It's a lot of content.
It's a significant amount, always rotating, always changing, never any better than it is now. Where I'd be like, this was just in the theaters, and now some of these are 6-week, 8-week turnarounds.
Yeah, no doubt. It's all who contracts it now, because everybody, you got the Hulu camp, and you got...
Once they get all that hammered out, and you end up with some monster like Time Warner, it's not going to be pretty. But right now, when they're fighting to get us, when they're fighting to serve us, we're getting nickeled and dimed to death. See, all these things are incredibly affordable at $4.99, at $8.99, HBO. I just finished up Game of Thrones, and that's about to be gone. But that
I know what you're saying with where everybody has a user fee, but I'll tell you what, I know what you mean. It's cut by 1,000 swords in the pocketbook, but I like it because I'm a very, very, very selective television watcher. Yeah, the piecemeal model is fine because look, all you got to do is really look at it. So cable, they run some sort of bait and switch situation where they're running $45.99 or whatever for 3 months, and then they hit you with $180 package or something totally absurd like that. And then it's if you actually do the math on this, it's 80% of your channels are totally useless to any human being. Even the guy who's into the fringe channels doesn't like the mainstream channels. I mean, nobody needs that much content. And so they're really taking every month at least $1.50 out of your wallet. Now, if you take that and dump $5 a piece into an individually cultivated medium that you're going to like, that you're going to enjoy, I think on the pocketbook, unless you're just a glutton, unless you're just a fat guy that just wants to sit there with a remote control and just swim in the ocean of channels, which has never appealed to me, I love that model. I totally love it. I love spreading it out. The only problem with that I can see is that all these people say that we're continuously compartmentalizing our media, compartmentalizing what we listen to, compartmentalizing what we hear. I imagine this only doubles down on that. Because at that point, you can really start to just hand to glove your entertainment.
CourageCulture.net